Knoxville, and this is Jackass. No, just kidding. I'm Jeremy Appel, and this is Big Shiny Takes, the world's foremost anti-free speech podcast. Joining me, as always, are my two pals, Steve-O.
I'm so glad you let them know that you were joking, that this isn't Jackass.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't want anyone to be confused.
Wait, this isn't Jackass? Why the hell am I on this show?
Well, we lied to get you on.
Yeah. I say this as I'm about to get fired from a cannon. No, but my guest hosts are guys by the name of Eric Wickham.
Hello.
I would say he is the Steve-O of the Big Shiny Takes crowd. And Marino Greco.
Okay. I'll just say I'm Bam, and I'm currently harassing my family.
Yeah.
He's so mean to his parents. But we've also got a very special guest today. You may know him as the host of a little scrappy podcast called Commons. Arshy Mann, welcome to the show, Arshy.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I'm a little worried about all the Jackass talk, just I don't do too well with like dealing with physical pain. All the fear factor kind of stuff doesn't really work for me. So we'll see how this goes.
Are you not a Joe Rogan fan?
Oh, God, no. Look, I'm just not going to listen to a guy who's made me watch people eat bugs. I'm just not going to do it.
He was good on news radio, though.
I never watched it.
Yeah, that means nothing to me. I know it exists, but
he had hair back then. So, anyways, Arshy is joining us today to talk a little bit about freedom. Who doesn't like freedom?
We have some thoughts about it here on the pod.
Beep.
The thing that people keep telling me is that freedom, in fact, is not free.
I've heard that before.
That's so true. So what's happening with the convoy? Because you guys live in Ontario, right? I'm in Alberta. There's a huge demonstration in support of the convoy over the weekend that went right outside my apartment building. It was like people as far as the eye can see. I hear in Ontario it's a bit different. It's
what I've been hearing, and I have pretty good sources on this, is that it is in fact the Woodstock of our times.
That's so true. In that these people are also covered in shit.
Yeah, the comparison to Woodstock is not as flattering as these people want it to be. I'm sure they want it to be the cultural touchstone for this generation, but really it's just a bunch of annoying people.
Wasn't that Woodstock? A bunch of really annoying fuckers, just at the dying end of a cultural moment right before they all go off and get jobs at fucking investment banks.
Well, I would love to see the Venn diagram of people who are at Woodstock and people who are in Ottawa right now. There's got to be at least 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, for sure. Boomers who've just fried their brains.
But there's so many contradictions to their cause. It's just what narrative are they even following at this point? There's this unifying white supremacy, but then they're all waving Canadian flags. But if you talk to these people, they all hate multiculturalism and anything that stemmed from that idea of Canada anyways. So it's just they're just really pining for something that I think just never really existed or is just 60 years old.
It's funny you say that, Marino, because I read that some with far-right extremist views have latched on to protests.
Oh,
so,
I see.
You don't want to judge.
Yeah, some people, like the people who organized the entire event, have latched on, and their white supremacist and radical right-wing views came along with them.
Yeah, they can't get rid of Pat King for some reason. He's such
always
a
around.
He's just
and you gotta make him in charge of an entire area of the convoy, right? You gotta get the Holocaust denier on your team, right? So of that group of organizers out in Alberta, we've got Tamara Litch, who was part of the Maverick Party.
Hell yeah. Medicine Hat's own Tamara Litch. I actually read someone tweeted that she had just like abandoned ship and taken the money. I don't think it was true, but imagine if it was.
I mean, that would be the move. I would kind of respect that level of grift.
But no, I think she's a true believer. I mean, she's like ass deep in like yellow vests and Wexit and like whatever these shitheads become, whatever becomes their new cause célèbre to like distract from the fact that they are at its core a white nationalist movement, right?
Can we just focus for a second on how stupid all of those names sound in conjunction with each other? Yellow vests. And then, yeah, fucking, like, Wexit is the dumbest, you know, portmanteau I've ever heard.
Well, it's because Brexit was I mean, say what you will about Brexit, but no one denies that it was an astonishing success. Things in Britain are great right now. And so why wouldn't you want to replicate that in Canada?
Look, I hear Boris Johnson's approval ratings are through the roof, so...
People love them some Boris.
100% of people who've done cocaine with Boris Johnson approve of him. It's pretty amazing.
Look, even the word convoy just kind of sounds like hilariously so. Like, all I can think about is the song from The Simpsons, right? Like,
Yeah.
You know, like that's the only thing that comes to my mind when you say convoy.
It's so hard for me to not laugh at this moment, but I feel like it's my job to not a little bit, because I feel like it's so easy to be derisive of the useful idiots of this convoy, which is the people in their tractors and their trucks and their Honda Civics blocking various roadways in Canada, including in Coutts in Alberta, where there's like a really serious situation going down.
Oh, hell yeah. No, it's amazing. The cops, they can't get rid of them because they don't want to use violence, right? When it's a bunch of their buddies who agree with them on everything, they can't use violence, right? They just have to talk with them nicely, try and de-escalate. You know, very different story if you're, say, an indigenous person defending their land from, you know, fossil fuel.
Or like a homeless person in an encampment in Toronto or Halifax or Hamilton.
Or sleeping in an abandoned transit station overnight in Calgary.
There's just like, it's easy to be derisive and laugh at this, you know, celebration of oath philosophy, but you can't deny that it's been effective. They have attention, and there's absolutely legitimate frustration that the left can't organize labor through a left-wing perspective that's maybe not racist, you know, more effectively in this country. So I don't know, what can we learn from all of this? Honking, honk. I don't know.
Honestly, I think the trucks thing is brilliant. Like, they're so visually compelling. It makes it look huge, and it is this kind of, you know, both symbol of this kind of like made up white working class, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest here, the vast majority of truckers are of Punjabi descent in particular, right? Like, that is the biggest contingent. They're not really anywhere to be found in these protests.
No. And is it really big rigs, or is it big trucks, which is really different?
Good point. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And what percentage of the people in this convoy do you think are actually truckers? Like, it's got to be single digits.
Oh yeah, they've got very few. You know, speaking about like the frustration on the left, you know, I was talking to my co-producer at Commons, Jordan, about all of this. And I was kind of saying like, you know, okay, the left should adopt this as a protest strategy. And she very rightly pointed out that unfortunately nobody in the left has a driver's license, so this just ain't gonna work.
Also, if the left did it, they would be shot.
Oh, 100%.
Right. There would be blood, right? Yeah. And you have to be willing to like put your life on the line for that. And I mean, some people are.
I think the point about the trucks being such a good symbol for this convoy, I think it really plays into it being a fake working class movement. There's been a lot of anonymous donations to the GoFundMe that was actually suspended minutes before we started recording this thing.
I can't believe Anonymous has taken such a hard right pivot.
Yeah, classic Anonymous. Very unpredictable. But like, it's the way that they have fetishized the truck in this way, the people that are supporting this rally, I think it's very evident in the piece that we're going to read today, because this is the husband of someone who works for the UCP who's writing it.
The UCP, which, their response to the blockade in Coutts has been very reflective of the party, like, splitting, it seems, right? You had Grant Hunter, who used to be Alberta's Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction. Now he's just a backbencher. He took his grandkids to the blockade at Coutts to show them the joys of, like, freedom and democracy. Another guy, Shane Getson, who represents a northern Alberta riding, compared them to the French Revolution. Like, compared them to the Jacobins, which, perhaps there's some truth to that, but...
I mean, only once they start cutting each other's heads off. Like,
yeah. And Jason Kenney, of course, who passed legislation a couple years ago in response to the Indigenous-led blockades and climate justice movement that would put people in jail for blocking critical infrastructure, has been like, guys, could you please leave? Please. It's like, in The Simpsons when they hire that PI to go after Sideshow Bob. He's like, I can be very convincing. And he's just like, please leave town.
yeah.
No, come on, I'll be your friend.
Yeah.
And so, and then Doug Schweitzer, who's actually my MLA. He was like the poster boy for, like, moderate conservatism, who just, like, fell into line once he got elected. Was just like, yeah, I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Well, Jeremy, is he like? Have you had any other MLAs in the past that you've served under that have commented on the Freedom Convoy? Like, sort of like other MLAs that you've been under the jurisdiction of that have commented on the Freedom Convoy.
Oh yeah, of course. That took me a second. The legend himself, Drew Barnes, who's no longer a member of the United Conservative Party because he thought he was quite vocal in saying that. And this is going to sound insane to people outside of Alberta, that they had imposed too many COVID restrictions that were infringing on our freedom. He tweeted out a beautiful image of the convoy, some compared to Woodstock. He compared it to the parting of the Red Sea in the Bible. For some reason, in this image, there were sharks, which I thought was a nice touch.
It's biblically accurate.
There also is in the background what could be a burning cross. It's kind of hard because it's, like, covered in water. So it's like, is that fire or water? But yeah, so I mean, that's what the mood's been in Alberta. But it seems to me, like, right, the convoy started here, right? So there are a lot of fucking chuds coming out and showing their support. But really, the consequences of the convoy are being seen in Ontario. And I think Quebec now as well. They've made their way to...
Yeah, it seems, well, they went to Ottawa for the big Saturday, and then they've just stayed there for a week. The Ottawa police are tossing their hands up, sort of like, we can't do anything. And then now it seems like the truckers are rebounding because they spent a very brief amount of time in the GTA, but now they're realizing, like, oh no, we got to make those Toronto Liberals suffer. And they're like, now a line of tractors is parked up Avenue Road near the ROM. It's all very distressing. It's clear. I saw one comment that said, oh, it's a real, like, urban rural divide. And it kind of does seem like some people from rural parts of the country are coming into the city to, like, disrupt and make us all miserable.
Yeah, it's very Maoist if you think about it.
That's what it is. They're all Maoists. It's an excuse to own the libs, right?
Yeah.
They saw the big cool trucks in Ottawa beeping super loud for freedom, and they went, we can do that. Hopefully it's not as insufferably loud in Toronto, and hopefully the counter protest that is taking place tomorrow on University by the hospitals has a good showing, because I think it would be nice to show these people that they are not welcome.
It would be a bit distressing, like, just Queen's Park being so close to all of those hospitals, right?
Yes.
Like, if you let them take over that part of town, like, there's actual danger in that. Yeah, not a good idea.
It's going to be a shit show tomorrow. And I mean, I'm not super looking forward to it, but I think I'm going to head down. And I don't know, this podcast is going to go on after. So if it never gets released, just know that I was killed by a truck. And on that note,
Eric died doing what he loved most.
being crushed by a vehicle. Yeah.
Let's get into this.
Before we get into the column, we should talk about Nathan Steinke, or as I thought his last name was, Nathan Stinky.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Yeah, take that, Nathan.
I don't think you can say that.
I'll bleep it
we'll,
out.
we'll check with the Institute lawyers.
So Nathan was a 2015 candidate for Peace River. In the Alberta election, he ran for the Wild Rose Party, which for folks who are not from Alberta, that is the weird socially conservative racist party. I remember Jeremy explaining it to me when he first moved out to Whitecourt. Every week they had a new press release for someone who was running for them, apologizing for saying something else that was racist.
I mean, the Wild Rose was essentially Alberta's very own version of Reform, like what Reform did on a federal level. The Wild Rose did provincially. So they eventually swallowed up the PC establishment party. Jason Kenney ran for the PC leadership explicitly to merge with the Wild Rose, but of course the Wild Rose had way more representation, so they got more of a say. And now, just like with the federal Conservatives, you see that coalition being torn apart between Reform and PC, and between Wild Rose and PC here in Alberta. I think it's obvious, though, that the Chuds have the upper hand, right? It's like Trump in the States. Like, everyone's going to have to fall in line with it or become fucking Alberta New Democrat, which is essentially PC, right? Like, Notley was like a great progressive conservative premier. I
mean, speaking of falling in line to the Chuds, I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that they got Aaron O'Toole turned. They got the leader of the federal Conservatives. Within days, he's just gone. This is kind of incredible.
Not for being wishy-washy on the convoy, at least not ostensibly, but for not being homophobic.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
I hate how much power they have. They do have power. And like their goal, I guess their real goal is to unseat alleged communist politician Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, the socialist god king, yes.
I mean, like they've done a decent job of like, I don't want to say delegitimizing the government, but I mean like delegitimizing the government.
Well, I think the government has done a good job delegitimizing itself by winning 2 elections consecutively that they failed to win the most votes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, speaking about the divide in the party between like the Chuds and the PCs.
The Chuds and the Cucks.
The Chuds, yeah. Yeah, the liberals that like low taxes, right? They're like, this kind of speaks to the larger divide that we're seeing in conservative politics, right? Like if you look at the candidates that are set to replace Aaron O'Toole in the leadership race, it is not a great list of people, right? Like you've got Pierre Poilievre, you've got Leslyn Lewis,
you got Peter MacKay, who I've heard the left is trembling in fear of.
Shout out to Jeremy's dad, Brian Appel, and the list kind of tails off pretty quickly, but. We saw Kevin O'Leary make that call to the CBC reporter being like, I am not interested in being a candidate. I do not want to run.
That's such a power move, though, calling up a like national politics reporter who's on mat leave to be like, look, a lot of people are telling me to run. I don't want to do it. But a lot of people are saying I should. And I just think you should know that.
Oh, my God. It's so embarrassing.
Tell it to your newborn.
Yeah. Yeah. So... story's not going to be written about Kevin O'Leary, but a lot of people are going to laugh. I was kind of hoping to see Tony Clement throw his name into the ring.
Yeah.
That would be something else. Just our own little Anthony Weiner making another run. And probably just like Anthony Weiner, he would trip up again.
Yeah.
Just get caught being catfished by 2 dudes trying to blackmail him. he has a radio show on the community station out in cottage country. It's called like Tony's Rockin' Shindig, and occasionally I'll put it on, and it is
that
so
can't
funny.
be true.
It's amazing.
I feel like his taste in music is like he's big into like Bachman Turner Overdrive and like April Wine. Like it's very like Canadian, like cottage country, like boomer music.
Yeah, shout out to Tony, Tony's Rockin' Shindig. Everybody should listen to that after this episode's done. We should probably get into this column.
Oh yeah. So this Nathan Steinke fellow, he's a loser. He lost in 2015. And of course, what do you do when you're a conservative loser? Why, you write columns for the post-media empire.
Right.
But this is the only thing I could find from him, right?
Yeah. And this is in the Edmonton Journal, right? Which is, I mean, I have a bias here, but it is a respectable newspaper. All the reporters there are good, and I don't want to get them in trouble by association, but they've got great, and so is the Herald. It's just management are the exact people post-media want in charge of that, and they're the ones who are soliciting these opinion pieces that often damage the credibility of the legitimate journalism these newspapers do.
And I mean, it's fun, the idea that we are catching Steinke at the start of his illustrious career as a shitty hack columnist. But like, what a great first step forward into the world of bad takes.
Well, and unlike some of the columns that you guys, kind of dissect, like this one feels pretty like, authentic. Like he really is believing this. This isn't just to own the libs, as you're saying, right? Like this is, you can feel the joy coming off of the page for this guy. Like he's invested.
Well, and he also doesn't specify which Woodstock he's referring to.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I could see like I don't know, is like Alanis Morissette is opening for like Limp Bizkit on like Parliament Hill.
I mean, this actually does have strong Woodstock 99 vibes. Like,
yeah,
this is exactly like Ottawa right now is experiencing Woodstock 99.
Yeah. The porta potties are overflowing. Like people are showering in water fountains.
Yeah, cars are on fire in the parking lot. Fred Durst is like crowd surfing on a mattress. Like it is.
No, I don't think these guys are into Limp Bizkit though. I think Limp Bizkit may be a bit too urban for them, if you know what I mean.
Oh boy, you're probably right. But let's not get bogged down in the details.
That was the first thought that came to mind too. It was like, I mean, obviously Woodstock 69 has this whole mythology behind it that isn't true.
Yeah.
But like Woodstock 99 is just full, like no one denies that it was just a total money grab that became a complete shit show.
Yes. Kind of like what's happening right now. So that's good. Arshy, we usually let the guest read the column. We won't put that on you if you don't want to read it.
No, I'm happy to read it.
Fantastic.
All right, let's get it going. Truckers Convoy, the Woodstock of our time. Like, good, solid title. I really know what the column's about, so I do appreciate that right off the bat.
You can't beat a good headline.
As the convoy was gathering steam on its way across Alberta, my wife suggested that we pull our children out of school for a week and join them. This is one of my favorite kind of like columnist tropes, right? It's just like, it's having a conversation with my family, and yet somehow it's going to lead us to like profound thoughts about our time, because the most important work really does happen at the kitchen table.
Yes, it's true. He's a family man, and you need to know that because he supports family values, and he supports the convoy.
Also, can you imagine like children being at what's going on in Ottawa right now?
Well, I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that is a mild form of child abuse.
There's this one video that was floating around Twitter where there's a person with their head out their window of their pickup truck waving a flag, and then a kid in a car seat in the back seat just kind of like looking down, and like clearly had been there for an extended period of time, and they had just checked out mentally. And it's like, that kid is not gonna like their parents.
Good. I hope they get emancipated one day. Sorry. If you, so yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to our listeners, maybe that's a controversial statement, but I think that if you are at the Freedom Rally and you've been there for a week and you have a child with you that has been there that whole week, that's probably not.
And you're pulling them out of school. Aren't these the same people who are whining about like online learning and how kids need to be in school?
I mean, let's be fair. A good number of these kids are being homeschooled.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, especially in Alberta.
Yeah, like
the government will pay you to homeschool your kids.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Do you want to jump back into this thing?
All right. The next line begins with "huh." Just "huh?" question mark.
Huh?
I love in the second line of this piece, you have a sentence that's just "huh."
Well, it makes sense because that's also what the reader's thinking.
That's right.
Yeah.
I really like it when the journalist is a proxy for the audience, right? Like it's very important. All right. What would ever cause my level-headed wife to seriously consider loading our 4 children into a van for a spontaneous 4,000-kilometer road trip from northern Alberta? Well, you know what? I can tell you what would cause your level-headed wife to do that. It was brain rot from watching way too many YouTube videos.
Yeah, like white supremacy.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and I like this trope of that it was spontaneous. Like this isn't astroturf. This wasn't just created for some lady in medicine hat to make like millions of dollars. Like this is a spontaneous demonstration.
I also enjoy that this interaction that he's having with his wife is spontaneous and certainly absolutely happened and wasn't just a contrivance in this man's mind so that he could write a column. Like this all absolutely took place.
Like this column for these 2 paragraphs could have gone in such an interesting direction. And maybe this is me just hoping for something better, where he could have gone, what would have ever caused my level-headed wife to seriously consider loading our 4 young children into a van? And then like through the piece realize that his wife wasn't perhaps so level-headed, and then have to have like an existential crisis and figure out if this is the life he wanted to live.
That's right. This is actually a modern love column about a divorce.
yes. He does leave his wife by the end.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get back into it. Her answer made me rethink the significance of this protest. Quote, "This is Woodstock," she said.
Wow.
I mean, just like who talks to their partner this way? These like cryptic aphorisms.
It's going to change the world, man, she said. It's just like if you saw this family, if you saw a picture of the 2 husband and wife, I don't think they would go to Woodstock is what I'm trying to say. And I don't think they would care if Woodstock was happening. It's very odd that they would make that connection.
Yeah, no, 100%. These are the same demographic of people who joined the first Woodstock, and also like 94 and 99 would just be like these fucking disgusting hippies. Like, get jobs.
At that moment, it clicked. The comparison to the iconic 1969. Okay, so he's specifying which Woodstock, unfortunately. Again, so close to making a good point if you just stuck with Woodstock 99. Yeah. Right? Like you're almost there. The comparison to the iconic 1969 rock festival clued me into what most Canadian politicians and pundits are missing. This is a cultural moment, not a political one. Oh God. And like you can already tell right here, now we're in the 3rd paragraph, that he's gonna bring up that Andrew Breitbart quote, right? Like politics is downstream from culture, which I believe we'll get to it, but he definitely does do that at some point in this column.
He absolutely does.
And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I can't stand it when that quote is used. And even in this one, he I don't even think he cites Andrew Breitbart. It's like, his real like deep thinking.
A wise man once said.
That's right.
A learned scholar.
A scholar, yeah.
Who died from doing like too much blow.
Exactly.
It's so good. It's like, okay, if politics is downstream from culture, is it also downstream from astroturfed foreign funding from weird anonymous donors.
And you just gotta love the irony that, you know, in Alberta, where this like movement, quote unquote, is originating, right now there's still the absolutely batshit inquiry into like foreign funding of environmental organizations, you know, the Rockefeller Foundation going after.
Yeah, the Tides Foundation, like George Soros, fucking the Illuminati. But Kenny's actually getting sued for that because the report came out. It found nothing, but Kenny continued to go on and say that it found that there was this foreign funded conspiracy. So a bunch of environmentalist NGOs are suing the premier, which interested to see how that'll play out.
That inquiry was getting so bad that even Vivian Krause was like distancing herself from it. It's like, oh, now you know this is going down the drain. Like,
yeah. She's just like, look, this is not what I had.
I won't say anything too bad about Vivian Krause because she has threatened to sue me before, but you know, so I'll just leave it at that.
I invited her on the podcast, but I think she thought I was inviting her on my other podcast, which is like a serious like interview show. And
this is a serious interview show.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, it just goes to show that just all of these like, I don't know, conservative obsessions, it's just all projection. All of it is projection, right? Like, I mean, even you look at like we'll get into, I'm sure, some of the white supremacy stuff later, but like the great replacement theory, it's like, oh, you're just actually describing what happened during settler colonialism. And now you're afraid it's going to happen to you, right?
Right, exactly. It's this profound insecurity.
It's because they know that they do this stuff, right? Whether it is like, yes, astroturf foreign funding, like that is a hallmark of these kind of right-wing movements in Canada and Europe and in the US. And so they're just like, well, the other side must also be doing it. It's like, no. You're absolutely missing what's going on with the left. It's not that they're so organized and they have all these secret funds. It's like, no, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. That's the problem with the left.
Yeah. We're not like callous and like willing to like band up with anyone to get whatever shady funds to back our cause.
My uncle is in Mexico right now, and he thinks it's very funny that all the white people in Mexico now know where Ottawa is, because like all American news has been talking about this crazy Canadian grassroots movement. And it's like, oh, it's weird that you guys would be talking about this place that you have ignored your entire existence until now.
That has been one of the most annoying things about all of this, is just the world media and all of just the worst people in the US paying attention to us, just being like just Elon Musk tweeting like, was it Canadian truckers rock? Like, I mean, I guess Musk actually, we unfortunately kind of own a piece of him too, right? He did kind of grow up here a little bit, spend time in Queen's University, is married to or has a kid with scribes. Oh my god.
Whose mother has done some great work on the foreign funding of environmentalist tropes.
It's true, yeah, and a former Canadaland host as well. So I think
the show everyone loved.
Let's make sure we release an episode that will encourage Arshy to come back one day rather than block us on all social media.
Oh yeah, let's keep it going here. What's next? Okay, the big rigs are one thing, but the real story is found in the miles of cars lining the shoulders of highways in -30 to watch the protests go by. I mean, I was kind of surprised by how many people like actually showed up to like and were excited by it. Now I saw people like friends of mine, like even journalists, kind of like in their like, you know, close friend stories, like tweeting about like convoy support. And this was when I first kind of heard about it. I didn't know what the fuck was happening last week because, you know, I don't want to pay attention to this nonsense.
It seemed like a lot of mainstream journalists were like fine with the convoy. They saw it as like a kooky human interest story until people started yelling at them and calling them fake news.
I mean, I'm of such two minds of like how the media has been covering this. Like in one way, like, yeah, it a lot of the press, I felt like in Ottawa was just kind of like looking for the first swastika they can find. And like, unfortunately, these guys made it pretty fucking easy for him, right? But then, you know, at the same time, there's like, it's a lot of political reporters who are used to covering Parliament Hill, and like, you know, scrumming politicians now being confronted by like sort of real people, but like really angry, largely racist real people. And they just really didn't know how to go about it. Like, I feel like reporters from either Toronto or especially Montreal would just be more comfortable like in this kind of setting, but you just don't get this shit happening in Ottawa. And I feel like you could really read the shock on reporters' faces while this was all going on. They were just like, it doesn't happen in this city. This city's too fucking boring. Like,
it's true. It's the, you know, there's so many protests in Montreal and there's so many protests in Toronto. There was an actual good protest that was happening last week that got no coverage in Toronto.
So the Palestinian solidarity protest?
Yeah, the Palestinian solidarity protest that marched from Yonge and Dundas to the Israeli consulate.
Well, actually, the lady from Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that it was the same as flying swastikas and that we need to be against both.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I would respectfully disagree. Arshy, do you want to get back into the piece?
Yeah, let's go.
Before we move on, I wanted to say sort of like something about like people not knowing how to initially gauge this convoy, and there was like more of an ambiguity about whether it was straight up going to be another January 6th thing. I think we've seen how it all played out over the past week, people digging in their heels. But I mean, like, I don't want to lose sight of like the legitimate parts of their grievances as working class people. And it's not the vaccine mandate stuff. Maybe it's just like the feeling of alienation or not being listened to. I can relate to that when I see pictures and like video of this like in Avenue Road and they're like sharing hot dogs and chumming it up. And it's just like a bunch of dudes I might have known from high school. Yeah, I think in the sense of like, oh, I could be there and then like maybe talk and listen to them halfway, but then you just think, oh, they're probably all unvaccinated and there's like a swastika flag like 2 meters that way. So it's just like, I don't know. I know where I stand now. So
I mean, that's the thing. I do think there are obviously a lot of legitimate grievances out there, and I think a lot of people have latched onto this kind of unthinkingly because it is just one of the few expressions of anger that we can kind of see out there. It's been a horrible few years. The government has failed us on every count. We're being treated like, you know, just kind of like worker robots, right? Like our work is just absolutely so critical and must happen, yet we're not getting any of the protections that we need to actually be able to, I don't know, have lives. And then now we're being asked to be locked down again. Not necessarily, you know, like the blame goes on the new variant, right? But the reason it's so devastating to us is because we haven't increased our hospital capacity at all in the last 2 years. And because we're not hiring or training more healthcare workers who are already burnt out to the core. Like, you know, so I think there is just a lot of anger that is being directed towards this, and people you know, aren't thinking too much about like who am I associating with. The problem becomes, you know, by that kind of anger is being captured by some really awful people, and they know how to use it, and it's, you know, kind of scary.
Yeah, it's like, it's a really good point. Like, people should be upset. I mean, CERB has been reduced to essentially not enough to cover rent. Like, it's like through the CRB or whatever.
Well, you have to demonstrate that you lost your job because of lockdowns that when it was announced didn't exist.
It was a liberal policy. There's going to be like 8 million different kinds of mean tests on it, right? Like,
yeah, you have to be a small business owner. who graduated from college like within the past year.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be able to do like 7 backflips in a row, and need to be able to do the alphabet backwards while singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star." Like, it's all nonsense, right? People should be supported through the pandemic. This is a once in a lifetime event. Hopefully, oh my God, hopefully. But our government should be supporting us. And it's like, I can't fault people for being angry, but I can fault them for associating with people like the supporters of the Queen of Canada, who wants to...
I'm so glad you brought her up.
Because like her supporters have been instructed to like shoot people who have been vaccinated, and they're just wandering around Ottawa, right? People are waving various white supremacist iconography on giant flags. There are people with legitimate swastikas on their flags, like just straight plain old swastikas. And
there are like people being asked, hey, who here is a white supremacist? And like the crowd is like neutral to
that was an incredible clip. Just like
yeah.
She's trying to prove the opposite, right? She's going around being like, are you a white supremacist? No. Are you a white supremacist? Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm reluctant to bring him up on the show, but did you see John Kay tweeting that out and being like, see, it proves that there are barely any white supremacists there.
Okay. At the risk of talking about John Kay, I mean, so many good just like comparisons between how he obviously was treating the blockades of like rail during the Wet Sweat and Solidarity protests versus this now, right? I mean, hypocrisy is like the most boring thing to point out because practically like everybody fucking does it. But, God, that man's just terrible. Just cannot. I mean, that is probably the most lukewarm take on the planet, but John Kay is awful.
He is so bad, and the world will never forgive Barbara Kay for bringing us John. And then her writing's also bad too. You wanted to say something
worse
about,
than he is.
Yeah. I think she's like more mask off than him. He tries to be cute about his like obvious bigotry. But you wanted to say something about the Queen of Canada.
Oh, it's just been amazing to watch, right? Like, so obvious, like just like so many aspects of this, or just the horrible right-wing nonsense the last 2 years, right? She's a mix of just like absolutely hilarious nonsense and legitimately like scary cultish thinking, the whole wanting to shoot healthcare workers, the fanatical devotion that her followers show her. And it was like watching the videos, it was both terrifying and really, really funny to see the like, dozens and dozens and dozens of people holding her weird purple flag. And it's all of these, especially it seemed like a lot of like white women in their 20s and 30s, just like hanging on her every word. And every word she says sounds absolutely batshit. I mean, she can't string together a normal sentence. And then, of course, she actually burns the Canadian flag. Which
is cool and good.
Which was hilarious. It was great. and then she's dismissing Justin Trudeau from his office. Like what a ballsy move to say, I am the Queen of Canada. I have replaced the Queen because she's actually been secretly executed. And now I run the country. And people believe you. It's incredible, and yet they're gonna end up killing somebody.
Do not talk about Her Majesty the Queen like that.
Exactly. Dale Smith is gonna get really mad at us. Arshy, do you wanna get back?
Those are four different queens.
Fireworks being shot. Okay, I'll start with the paragraph we were reading because I kind of cut ourselves off halfway. So the big rigs are one thing, but the real stories found in the miles of cars lining the shoulders of highways, minus -30 to watch the protests go by. Fireworks being shot from overpasses, raucous celebrations through small towns and cities. This is one of my favorite lines because it's just so out of left field. Crowds of Hutterites, traditionally apolitical, holding homemade signs of support and offering food. I did not expect that we were going to get into like Hutterites. Like, are we going to get into like other Anabaptist groups in here too? Like, it's just very random, but all right.
But can you imagine if Indigenous people did any of that?
It seems like such an obvious point, right? Like, it's such an obvious thing that it barely even needs to be stated. Like, the left and oppressed groups cannot do this. This is not allowed, right? Yeah, it would be Oka. I mean, we have seen this over and over the last few years, how instantly militarized these like protests from the left become, right? Like, it's, and we're not even talking about, the infiltration tactics, right? That police and other security agencies use to take down the most milquetoast groups, right? Like anti-mining organizations that organize small protests have literal cops who show up to their meetings pretending to be, pretending to be supporters. And you just can't imagine the RCMP or any other agency doing it to these groups because, as we know, look, cops are supportive of this. Cops are supportive of the most extreme elements of a lot of this stuff, right? When it comes to either the white supremacy side or if we're even talking about vaccine mandates, right? Police have been one of the groups who fought back hardest against that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it makes me so sad. Sorry. Do you want to jump back into it?
Yeah.
No additional comment, no lies detected.
Social media pages dedicated to the convoy instantly gained tens of thousands of followers. The largest Facebook group has now reached well over 700,000 members in the span of a week. I mean, it just goes to show you, like, who's also involved in this protest, right? It's like people are joining Facebook groups.
Just like Woodstock, you know?
Exactly, yeah. But it means, like, everybody is, like, over 50.
700,000 of our softest-brained boomers are supporting this cause.
Well, this is an astroturfed movement, and I think the fact that 700,000 people would join like that is actually a red flag, and it's weird that he's telling on himself or on the movement this way.
And even the small proportion that are real, like most of them have got to be Americans or people from else, right? Like, this is not Canadians because it was getting so much international attention. You know, everyone just joins all of these, you know, they join like 100 of the different kind of right-wing groups at once. And like, this is not, I think, indicative of the actual support that this, you know, quote unquote movement has.
Yeah.
Canadians are tuning out of mainstream media sources, more likely to follow the convoy's progress through TikTok and Facebook videos. Okay, I will note, it was amazing to me how often TikTok was trying to feed me live feeds of the convoy. It's still kind of happening. It was basically like every 10th video, and I don't like engage with political stuff on TikTok really, like, you know, it's for like cooking videos and like cat videos and, you know, stupid shit. Right? And yet it was just instantly like trying to churn me into that. I found it really gross.
Speaking of TikTok, John Kay made a TikTok account, and I'm sure it's great. But yeah, I have not seen any convoy stuff, and it's because I've worked very hard on my algorithm to show me Lyle the therapy gecko as much as possible. I like the man who's in the giant gecko costume taking calls from all over the world.
I know that guy.
Yeah,
yes.
that's
I didn't realize
wonderful.
he was a gecko.
Yeah, he's just a big lizard guy. I don't want to see any sort of news analysis on TikTok because I think it's going to be bad. And no offense to anybody who's doing analysis on TikTok, but 60 seconds is not enough to talk fairly or deeply enough about something that's as convoluted and multi-layered as something like an astroturfed trucker convoy that's taking tens of thousands of dollars in single anonymous donations from all over the world. But yes, I digress. Do you want to jump back into this piece?
Politicians should thank their lucky stars that this event hasn't yet morphed into a cohesive partisan organization, because this is the kind of organic support that no party in the nation has ever achieved. I mean, there is no cohesion to any of this, right? I mean, you can't imagine these folks sitting down and coming together with like a list of like demands that they can all get behind. You know, it is incoherent anger at a variety of things, but they don't.
Who would sit at that table to even make the call? Like you're right, they have like an infinite number of demands. It starts with like no vaccine mandates, and then it goes no vaccines, no masks. Then it goes Queen of Canada, arrest Justin Trudeau, get rid of him. Yeah. Like it's mind-boggling to even keep track of the list of things that these people want.
Some of them want just all Muslims to leave Canada, right? I mean, those are some of the prominent organizers who are posting this kind of, you know,
right, like Tamar Lich, who also, he says no partisan political party could contain this movement. Well, the founder works for the Maverick Party, which is a joke, and, you know, had one, like, didn't even, I don't think, crack double digits in any riding in Saskatchewan or Alberta during the federal election. But I mean, it's still it's a political party, right? It's a partisan project by definition.
And while kind of jumping off that, while yes, there is no cohesive partisan organization, I mean, the Conservative Party sure is trying to like jump on this and like use it to their advantage. And in the process, they're tearing themselves to bits, right? Okay. In the number of donors and the total donation amount, the Convoy's GoFundMe page has outcompeted every political entity in Canada, all without being able to issue generous taxpayer-funded tax receipts. I mean,
old news, rip.
Also, I wonder if there's a connection there between all the money it's received and the fact that it's not like legitimate tax deductible charitable purpose.
And also, if he's pointing out that our political parties in Canada are unbelievably inept and have absolutely no connection to real people on the ground, like, you're right. All of them, they're terrible. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. These are, just largely like institutions to give some people jobs in Ottawa or like provincial capitals. Okay, where were we? Here we go. Have there been concerns about what happens with that money? Sure. I mean, again, considering the amount of scrutiny, anytime like a left-wing movement raises any amount of money, just like the investigations that go into it, both from the media and from, even like police agencies, which, like, sure, there are like grifters on the left trying to take people's money. That absolutely happens. But again,
Sean King.
Yes. Oh my God. But, it's just like it gets hand waved off here like so quickly. All of that money is just another indication of like, support of proof that this is an absolutely, groundswell of a movement. All right. Is everyone heading to Ottawa with the exact same polished message? Not a chance.
I mean, that is one way of putting it.
He is building a very strong case why you should not support this cause. I don't think he thinks he's doing that.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I don't know, maybe everyone will eventually get behind the message of the Queen of Canada and this will become a real cohesive partisan movement to install the rightfully appointed Queen, Romana Diddaloo.
Nothing but support for my monarch.
That's right.
Oh my God. I hear that these are just political concerns, though.
That's right. It's only the worries of staffers who must curate a careful image for their bosses. I'm not totally sure what this one means.
Like I think he's trying to dismiss legitimate criticisms of the convoy as, worries by the political class, which he is not a part of because he lost the election he was in.
Because he's a loser.
Yeah.
That's what you have to remember for your reading list. This guy is a loser.
Yes.
He couldn't even win as Wild Rose. Where did he run? Was he in Edmonton candidate?
No, I think it was Peace River.
Oh, he couldn't win as a Wild Rose candidate in rural Alberta. This guy is a fucking loser.
That is rough.
Capital L.
Oh yeah, and here we are, at the thesis statement of the piece. This is a cultural moment defined by the concerns of those who attend and those who support them. I mean, forgetting the fact that the latter half of that sentence really doesn't make sense, or it's just like, on its face weird. The whole like trying to divide this between politics and culture, like I think it's just a way to elide any responsibility for the messaging that's coming out of this convoy, right? By saying that it's about culture instead of politics, then it's like, well, when we're talking about the swastikas that are being flown, the fact that nobody's jumping and beating the shit out of the people flying a literal Nazi flag.
Yeah, that's a red flag. That stuff should be
It's literally a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they should.
Well,
but all of that, by saying this is about culture, it means that you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? Like this is, it somehow rises above politics, and like that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you brought that point up about the flags, because there's a lot of like whataboutisms and like, a few bad apples can't ruin the movement. I have been to protests before, and I can tell you that if someone had a flag like that gentleman in Ottawa did, he would not have that flag for very long, and he would not have the ability to wave that flag for very long, because someone would take a swing at him very quickly.
So I'm going to like digress in a little story about something that happened to me in the summer. I was out waiting for a streetcar middle of the night, like 1:30 a.m., like heading out back home after being at a bar. And this guy just comes up to me, 20 something, like alt-right shithead, clearly, and just starts yelling at me, Muhammad raped a 9-year-old. Muhammad raped a 9-year-old. And he's just fucking screaming this shit in the middle of like downtown Toronto. And like, I start doing what I do, recording him, yelling at him, like this kind of stuff. Very embarrassingly, also just like begging him, like, take a swing at me so I can punch you. Because, I'd had a few drinks and like, this guy's screaming racist shit at you. That's what you do. Eventually, I get my bearings a little bit. I'm like, all right, I just got to walk away from this. And then I start walking away. I turn around and he's on the ground. Because guess what? Somebody fucking hit him. Because he's screaming racist shit in downtown Toronto. Like, that's what's gonna happen.
And this is what I'm hoping is going to happen in Toronto. I'm hoping it gets ugly. I'm hoping citizens, for like the kind of people who are out there supporting homeless encampment protests, kind of people out there supporting pro-Palestine protests. There's a lot of people like that in Toronto, and they're going to be out there, and they're not going to be very amenable to these people. I don't know.
I think it's much better that people, like, I don't know, groups of like citizens who actually like give a shit about their fellow man, take back the streets. I'd prefer that than like some of the calls we've had for massive police, crackdowns and things. Like, people were calling for like another G20, like, guys, that was bad, right? Like, we shouldn't.
No, it's cute when we do it.
Exactly. Like, we don't want to be encouraging like mass state violence as a response to protest. Because guess what? Who's that actually going to end up being used on the next time? Like, this will be used as a justification to, crack down hard on any progressive movement out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I hope tomorrow doesn't get ugly, but I hope it's embarrassing for the truckers that show up.
Yeah.
I hope they get drowned out by the people that show
up. That is the
ultimately
best case scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Maybe fighting is the wrong. I just don't want there to be tolerance for hate symbols, and I want there to be like a willingness to self-defend ourselves. I just don't want to be like, I just don't want people to just take this and then like, I want people who are not, I want leftists to organize.
Yeah, there should be confrontation. I don't think there should be violence necessarily. And even that story that I was saying, I want to be clear. After I realized the guy was hit unconscious on the ground, I called the fucking ambulance. I stayed with him, made sure that he was able, breathing, safe. When the ambulance came, then, he was okay. I ran off because I knew the cops were around the corner as well, because I don't want to be there. So, I'm not a fan of violence, but at the same time, if you're doing racist shit in public like that, you have swastikas, if you're screaming, racial epithets or whatever it may be, you're going to get hit. Like, it's a law of nature, right? I'm not even justifying it. That's just what's going to happen.
Yes.
And, in some instances, right, like, if you are at a protest like this and you're standing on a stage and there's the guy next to you does have a fucking swastika flag, maybe you don't punch him in the face, although I think that would be fine, but you certainly try to get rid of the fucking flag by whatever means necessary.
Yeah. Well, it's like that saying, like, if you're at a party with one Nazi in it, you're at a Nazi party. Like, it's that simple. Like, complicity as simple as not saying anything. And that's the group you're a part of if you don't stop them. So
exactly. All right. Political watchers would do well to remember that politics is downstream of culture.
Oh, there it is.
Right? But it's practically plagiarism here, like, at least you gotta like mention the fucking Breitbart thing. But like, I don't know if that's just like he's trying to like take credit for that idea, or if he thinks that a mention of Breitbart would like undermine his points here.
He might have never even known that was a Breitbart quote. He probably just like got it through osmosis by hanging out with a bunch of shitheads all the time.
But how could you not, right? Like, it's been touted in every fucking hot take piece about like the Trump presidency for the last 4 years. Like,
Yeah.
Confucius said politics is downstream from culture.
Yeah, I believe it was.
Look, you got a problem with that? Take it up with Confucius.
Yeah. No, I always thought it was Winston Churchill, but
Yeah, it was Dr. Norman Bethune said politics is downstream of culture.
The one statue these guys want to take down.
Yeah.
The one guy who deserves a statue.
Let's talk about the statues thing a little bit as well, because again, this is just like where like Twitter has just seemed so stupid to me. People and even a lot of the mainstream coverage, like people are like talking about the desecration of the statue of like Terry Fox. It's like, what the fuck, guys? Like, let's not fucking get all precious about statues. Again, nobody cares about statues in this way. And also the desecration they were talking, wasn't it like they put a
The
hat
war
on him?
memorial.
They
yeah.
put like a hat on him, and like he was like waving a flag now. And
It's like it's an attempt to co-opt a popular Canadian
Right.
figure.
I don't think they're trying to like insult Terry Fox. I think that they learned that he was a good guy in school, and they're like, well, he's a good guy and we're a good guy, so obviously he would be against vaccines, even though he's fucking Terry Fox.
White Canadian. I think it's literally as simple as white Canadian runner, old stock Canadian athlete, guy good.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, he's like the one kind of untouchable figure we have in like the Canadian mythos. I've always said as well, like the most Canadaland story that we could ever do would be the takedown of Terry Fox.
you know,
Hire me, I will do that.
it's about time someone took that man down a peg.
That's
I think.
right. Okay, I feel awful even saying that.
I mean, he probably was racist.
Oh god, this is what gets us canceled for sure. But moving away from Terry Fox in particular, I did find
He
like,
probably
some
had
of the
problematic
concerns around like say statues just like a little bit too much. Same thing, even just like people are peeing in the streets, right? Like that was a justification used to like go after the Trinity Bellwoods encampment. And I think we need to be careful around like just because the other side, who are, in this case, mostly a bunch of racists and white nationalists, are doing shit that is, that we find that in other situations are used as justifications to attack, much more sympathetic groups. Like you just have to be careful of like bringing that kind of rhetoric into like how we talk about these things.
Well, I was actually on Bottlemen last week, and Dan Beckner made a very good point that if only the victims of communism memorial had been built already.
Oh my god!
One of the funniest things not funny. One of the most infuriating things I saw out of the last week was when people were like, "Oh, they didn't get a permit to protest."
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It's a parade if you get a permit.
That is the most lib-brain take.
And
It's just like all things being equal. Like, come on, you gotta get a permit.
I will say, like, I'm pretty sympathetic, especially as this thing drags out, to people who actually live in downtown Ottawa. And just like the noise is kind of absurd. And these are, some of these folks have attacked people, although we haven't seen much organized violence, I think. Though that kind of threat still looms, I suppose. But I can understand why it's scary, why it's frustrating. But, at the same time, again, I think we just have to be careful that, like, this doesn't get turned around on people who actually do need to use protest to fight against the government, because protest is ugly oftentimes, right? Like, in fact, making people uncomfortable is often the point, is the way to get, is the way to exert some kind of power. So I don't know. I'm torn about it. I still think most of these folks are absolute shitheads. And if I was in downtown Ottawa, I'd be, going crazy, but still.
Yeah. And seeing a lot of tweets from Ottawa, just, people mentioning that they're adding eggs to their grocery list. And I mean,
hell yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta crack
I
some
love
eggs.
that. Look, yeah, egg 'em. That's great, right? It
That's
makes
great.
them uncomfortable. It's not really violence, although, they'll try to justify it, but it makes them look like fools. And that's a perfect response, I think.
I mean, that's too, I've, I've talked to Kurt Phillips a lot with the Anti-Hate Network, who is just such a fucking badass. I think he was on Canadaland too to talk about how he's like a high school teacher by day in Drumheller and like a Nazi hunter by night. And that's what he was saying too. He's like, you've got to make these people an object of ridicule, right? Like you have to take the threat seriously, but you also, you know, you can't just beat them by being like, well, actually, sir, you are being inaccurate, right? It's like these people are jokes and you have to expose them as such.
Yeah, and as we've seen over and over again the last few years, you know, the stupidest, like most kind of like people who should be the objects of fun can be dangerous, right? I mean, again, Adolf Hitler, not to get, you know, inevitably a conversation goes to Hitler, but then again, we literally do have Nazi flags in this thing. But, you know, he was a ridiculous fucking guy. Right, like the beer hall putsch.
His birthday was 420.
That is true. But like, how could you kind of take this guy seriously who tries to like coup the government after just getting drunk at a beer hall? Right, like that is hilarious. But at the same time, you know, was dangerous. So I don't think those things, we can still make fun of them. And in fact, that is an effective tool against them while still acknowledging their danger, exactly like you were saying.
Yeah. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, like Donald Trump, objectively good tweeter, not good for the world.
Donald Trump is like a once-in-a-lifetime comedic talent.
It is. He has good delivery.
I miss him every day.
Like just such good timing. And like especially if you watched like before like the early like Republican like primary debates when he was just like when he called Rand Paul ugly.
When we see something that is so clearly tapped into the beating heart of Canadians, we should recall that politics is usually the final domino to fall. Issues are decided before elections, not during them. So again, up until this point, like you said, we're about 2/3 of the way through this article. He hasn't actually mentioned what the issue is. What is this convoy about? It hasn't come
More
up
freedom.
Once. Right? Like it is so just vague and amorphous.
They want to be able to drink and smoke inside the Rideau Center.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually kind of in favor of that. So
Yeah,
what
me
this is
too.
about, let's do it.
Yeah, I saw one sign at the Ottawa convoy that just said legalize freedom. And so like that's kind of like what I've been using as
Why
like, the
hasn't
big
anyone
tent.
thought of that?
It's like you got to make freedom legal, you know? And I mean, when you go that wide, you kind of lose sight of an actual goal, but that's something that people can get behind at least.
And I think that is where some of the support is coming from. The stuff that isn't astroturfed, right? Like, because it is so like vague, it's about so many, can be about basically anything that, you know, it's just the anger that pierces through. And a lot of people are angry. So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Politicos fear messaging that is not carefully controlled. They fear the messy and unrefined world of protest. As it turns out, what everyday Canadians fear is something far more real. Fear for their futures, their children, and their ability to put food on the table. What does any of this have to do with anything? I don't understand.
It's like the thing that kept people from being afraid of that was CERB. The idea that this convoy is the thing that's going to give people comfort that they're going to be looked after is ridiculous because it's kind of a death march. Right? It's like we want the freedom to be able to die at work.
You know, I kind of understand, say, anti-lockdown protests, right? Like, but anti-vaccine mandates, like, I don't know. I kind of, you know, we do need to get more people vaccinated, and there is going to be this percentage of people that never will. The fact that this has just become like the resonant issue of the times, and now because of this convoy is going to be debated endlessly for the next few months. I mean, isn't Alberta actually like looking to get rid of their vaccine mandates?
Yeah,
even at
as
the same
soon
time
as next week.
That's wild. I mean, it's like we're just coming out of this wave, and now it's like, you know, vaccine mandates are one of the few things that are actually, I don't know, decently effective, I suppose.
Like, it's like we exist in a time loop. Like last year, Jason Kenney too was like, we're removing all restrictions this summer. It's going to be the best summer ever. And would you believe it? ICUs became, you know, overfilled by September. And, you know, we never learn. And these anti-vaxxers and anti-lockdown types, I mean, they've won. They've got everything they wanted. And they're still complaining because it's not actually about vaccine mandates. It's not actually about COVID restrictions, right? It's about white supremacy. Yeah.
That sense of white supremacy that they want to be taken legitimately, they want to stop being ridiculed. And that's why I think what Arshy said before was really poignant. We do need to just keep ridiculing them, no matter how much like capital power or maybe political power that they might have in that sense, or how much attention might be on them. They are a fringe minority, and they are the object of antipathy for many, many, many Canadians, and we need to make that apparent.
Let's finish this column off. We're pretty close.
The convoy resonates deep within them in a way that few politicians will ever be likely to access. The visceral calling of the road, the need to be part of something bigger at this particular moment in history, does not need the refinement and polish of a political campaign.
So I'm sorry. Let's finish this column off. This is so masturbatory. He is just fetishizing truckers here, and it is creepy and sweaty and weird, and I feel like we should make note of that.
The call of the road.
Yeah. And again, it's fetishizing like this kind of image of a white truck, right? Like there's no way they're imagining South Asian truckers who most of these people wouldn't associate with in a million fucking years, right? Like he's picturing this kind of foregone kind of white working class man who comes from like a bad Bruce Springsteen song. Actually, I want to take that back. There's a lot of good Bruce Springsteen songs. I don't want Springsteen. Exactly. I don't want him to catch any strays here.
Well, now he has a podcast with Obama, so
that's right.
He may fucking drone you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like you said, it's so masturbatory.
And I mean, you're right though. Like this, amazing image that he draws for himself about this white trucker. There's like a real stark contrast to the South Asian trucker that is stuck at the border crossing in Coots, blocked off by white people. Weird, alienated, angry white people.
Who aren't even truckers. Like, they own a truck, but like that's not their job. Which is why Davide was 100% correct when he said we should ban trucks, except for when people need them for work.
Yeah. And it is one of these things, this whole visceral calling of the road. Guess what? That's not why people become truckers. They become truckers because it's one of the last jobs of last resort left, right? It is one of the few jobs that like immigrants who don't have their like qualifications recognized here, or who just need to put food on the table, can get. The working conditions are absolutely terrible. There have been other trucker protests over the last year because of massive wage theft that takes place within the trucker industry, right? I mean, it's a dangerous job. There's so many actual concerns that real truckers have. Vaccine mandates is not one of them. 90% of truckers, just like the rest of the population, are vaccinated.
It's just amazing that like this column can exist like just in pure cognitive dissonance, like just like a detachment from reality. It's like, like the call of the road.
And this is, another just great part. For what it's worth, our family just couldn't make the trip. It's like I don't actually have enough kind of commitment to this to do that, right? Like,
yeah, but you should.
Exactly.
You dear reader.
I can dream about it. I can write a whole column about it in a major city newspaper. But however, I know many people from the quiet rural north who did. The quiet rural north. Very interesting. Groups of friends or spouses who decided with pure conviction to get in a vehicle and just go.
Quiet is a weird adjective to use there.
Right? What does that imply? Like,
just, a couple quiet white people. Like that's what it feels like. Maybe I'm inferring a little bit there.
It is the silent majority that's finally doing something to stamp out, the horrible things happening in this country.
Yeah. Soft-spoken Johnny Canada is coming down from Wainwright, Alberta, to kick Trudeau in his behind. It's just.
Oh yeah. That reminds me. They were chanting, "Let's go, Brando."
Yeah. Very good portmanteau.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the final line. I suspect that much like Woodstock, everyone years from now will claim to have been there as the stories and legends filter down to our kids and grandkids. I can tell you a lot of people in Ottawa will never forget this. That is for sure.
Well, and I think a lot of people will claim to have not been there who were there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It's like imagine gathering all your grandkids around the fire. This is during the climate change wars that are inevitably going to be happening, 40 years from now. And you're like, kids, I got to tell you a story about the time the Queen of Canada told me to shoot the Prime Minister, and I tried.
Yeah. Oh, and even his political his like sign off here. Is it Steinke? Stinky. Nathan Stinky is from Valley View,
Steinke
Alberta.
is a very Albertan last name.
Steinke. Yeah. All right. Nathan Steinke is from Valley View, Alberta. He is a father of 4 and has worked as a political staff. I just love the inserting the father of 4 thing, right? Like, it has nothing to do with absolutely anything.
He's just a good salt of the earth family man.
And also, like, the fact that he was insulting political staffers earlier in this column, wasn't he? Like,
Maybe he's trying to deflect from any criticism. Fortunately, such pathetic tactics don't work on us.
He's a political staffer, but he's also a father of 4. And also his wife works for the UCP in some capacity.
Yeah, I think his wife is a political staffer. Yeah. He's just some loser who couldn't win a seat for the Wild Rose in Rome.
It's very funny that they included that, because it is like they just want people to think like, oh, he's just a dad. He wants what's best for his country and his kids. And it's like, no, he's the person that he is discounting earlier in the piece. And that plays into the fact that this is not a working class movement. This is not like a blue collar thing. This is people with clear political agendas trying to push an idea and a narrative down the throats of everybody in this country. And unfortunately for some of my Facebook friends, it clearly has worked. Oh, so depressing.
yeah.
But I mean, Arshy, thank you for getting through that piece with us. We usually, at the end of a column like this, we usually riff about the person who wrote it, but this guy's invisible.
Pretty anonymous.
Yeah. He's like either got like a 0 digital footprint because he's like a super spy, or he's just never been on the internet before. So typically at the end of the show, we try and do a bit of a palate cleanser and talk about things that we read this week that weren't bad and were interesting. It could be any piece of media, movie, TV show, book, article, anything that you're working on either. And then we'll just go around and we recommend it to our listeners. Jeremy.
Yes, well, directly relevant to this topic, there's a great piece from Emma Jackson of Climate Justice Edmonton in The Breach, talking about how the left needs to seize on this discontent that's emblemized by this convoy and channel that anger in like a positive direction. Definitely recommend you check that piece out. Fuck, what else? There's another piece. Oh, yes. Friend of the show, Tom Ross, fucking took down Chief of Staff to Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek, Stephen Carter, for being a bully. He's got a couple stories on that, City Calgary. And yeah, apparently he was working on the story about how Stephen Carter's an asshole, which is, breaking news. Anyone who knows who he is. But he reached out to the mayor, Jody Gondek, for comment, and then Carter immediately got fired. So shout out to Tom. Like, that is like journalism at its finest, and you gotta come on the pod.
Yeah, another victory for cancel culture. Arshy, have you read, seen, made anything that you would want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll recommend our latest season of Commons, just in case people haven't listened to it. Basically, we focused in on Canadian mining, and that's, starting back from the Klondike onwards to the kind of international mining empire that exists in Canada today. I mean, if you actually want to hear stories about Canada being oppressive and the awful shit that companies do to people both here and abroad with the full backing of the Canadian government. This is something I think you should check out. And again, with like most of our podcasts, it'll be pretty depressing, but it won't be boring. This is not going to be, these aren't academic discussions about these issues. So if you haven't checked it out, I'd recommend that.
It's such a good
Co-signed.
Yeah. We all love the show. The episode about the coal mine disaster out east is like
Westray, yeah.
It's like horrifying to listen to, but I couldn't stop. It's such good storytelling. I have a couple things that I would like to recommend. You already recommended Common, so I don't have to do that. But Dan Collin from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, he's been writing about the far right forever, but he actually ended up on an American podcast called It Could Happen Here, talking about the Trucker Convoy. Very interesting. Also great to see a Toronto journalist get their due on an American show. On top of that, there's a great piece called The Freedom Convoy is Nothing But a Vehicle for the Far Right, and it really takes down Tamara Litch and Pat King and Ben Dieter. I've only seen his name written. I've never seen.
There's a funny Canadian Jewish news piece on him because he's Jewish. Okay. Headline is, "Who cares about swastikas in the Trucker Convoy?" Group's Jewish spokesperson asks.
What the fuck?
Jesus Christ.
Whoa.
That is...
It's actually an episode of the CJN's CJN Daily podcast, which I have some problems with how they framed certain stories, but great headline.
That's a great segue into the next thing that I was going to recommend, which was a panel that Jeremy Appel was on, actually. It was the Canadian Jewish News show, Bonjour.
Yeah, it was their
right?
other podcast.
And it was a panel about the future of progressive Zionism, which Jeremy was a part of, and he melted a guy's brain at one point. It's very, very funny. Jeremy does a great job. He represents a progressive view that I don't think gets a lot of space in this country on that specific topic.
Well, certainly not in the Jewish community.
Yes, and honestly, you should pat yourself on the back. I don't want your head to get too big because, I mean, it's really great. And, like, everybody who listened to it loved it, so everybody should listen to that.
Even my parents were like, "Oh, you made some interesting points."
Hell yeah. Everybody also should join our Discord. If you enjoy shit posting on Twitter, do it with friends and not have weird alt-right trolls screaming at you in your DMs. It's plenty of fun. We'll put the link in the show notes. I'm so sorry. This is a very long recommendation. If you see your friends posting about the Trucker Convoy in a positive light, bully them. Cyberbullying, I'm recommending cyberbullying. Be mean to your friends. They deserve it.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're talking about, and it will be fun, and you will feel better. And honestly, take a screenshot, tag us on Twitter, and we will share it with all your new friends on the left. Marino, do you have anything that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, I guess it's been before all this convoy stuff happened, it's been very cold in Toronto, like very cold, and there's been a lot of snow, so it's kind of sapped my energy to do any sort of focused reading. I'm still trying to get through Jakarta Project.
Jakarta
which
Method?
is still cool.
Method.
Sure, Jakarta Method. Thank you.
You should start by reading the cover.
It's been that's how long it's been. I've forgotten the name of the book, but I don't know. Recently, I've
Great
just sort of
fucking
been
book.
I've been following some of the, I guess, reporting under the Toronto Star headline by like Olivia Bowden, and I don't know if anyone else is on the team is like covering the Trucker Convoy or like leading that coverage, but I follow her on Twitter, and yeah, they've been on top of it. They've been providing, I think, a pretty good perspective that is a little bit not quite in line with past things from the Star, where we're more directly antagonistic to vaccine mandates in a not helpful way, maybe with certain front pages that they had. But yeah, that and just very basic like comfort food watches, like rewatching Transformers Beast Wars from my childhood, and that's been my diet lately.
Fantastic. Well, Arshy, I guess that brings us to the end of the show. I kind of don't want it to end. This has been really fun.
Eric's gonna sing My Way.
Yeah, that's how we close the show.
I love it.
No, but I did want to say, Arshy, when me and Eric ran into you at a bar in Toronto, And you said not only do you listen to our podcast, but you enjoyed it.
That was very nice. You didn't have to say that. And
yeah, no, it meant it really did mean a lot to me. And your work is like so vital in Canadian journalism, and I'm really grateful that you took some time out of your Friday night to read this awful take with us.
And I appreciate you lying and saying that you enjoyed our show.
Oh no, it was great to run into you guys, and I'm so happy you actually invited me on. So yeah.
Well, please come back soon sometime, and we promise it will not be about the Trucker Convoy.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.
It's Big Shiny Takes, the only anti-free speech podcast. Big Shiny Takes, reading garbage for your brain. It's Big Shiny Takes with Jeremy, Eric, and Marino. Big Shiny Takes are sure to entertain. Are sure to entertain.
Eric, you forgot to sing My Way.
Oh, shit.